Man, we're good friends.
Yeah.
All right.
Of course.
And you know you can smell that, girl. You know you smell it, girl. You know you're smelling the fried dumplings, the ackee, and the saltfish. What's come over you?
I should have called.
That's it, Sue. I'm formally inviting you into my home. Now come inside.
Oh yeah, that shit is good. Sinners is the latest film by director Ryan Coogler, who's best known for Fruitvale Station, Creed, and of course, Black Panther. But unlike his previous work, this is the first time Coogler has been able to go all out with his own original piece. Not a sequel, not an adaptation, just pure Coogler vision. And if this is just a small glimpse into his creative mind, well, I'm excited for this man's cinema. It's always refreshing when a studio puts their faith in an auteur and just lets them do their thing, removing the restraints often placed on visionary directors when creating bigger budget studio films. And while Sinners definitely takes inspiration from other works, it's obvious that this was a very personal piece with a clear and inspired vision. It has a lot to say and does it with grace and style, and it's elevated by the wonderful performances, magnificent cinematography, but most of all through its music. It is impossible to watch this film and not hum the music for the rest of the week. We're talking blues, hip hop, metal, and even Irish folk music. It came as a huge surprise to me when I found out that the film was composed by Ludwig Göransson. He did the score for Tenet, Mandalorian, and Oppenheimer. Honestly, I kind of assumed that the score would have been done by a famous blues musician, but this just goes to show how talented and how much range the man's got. He's got banger after banger under his belt, and I can definitely see why him and Coogler have developed a relationship. If he doesn't win another Oscar, I'm gonna riot. I think this movie operates best if you go in not knowing too much about it. I got really lucky in that I didn't really see a lot of trailers for this movie, and I haven't really had an experience quite like this since Everything Everywhere All at Once, where I went in completely blind and I just got taken on this crazy ride. So if you can avoid it, I would. And I'm not going to go too deep into spoilers at the beginning of this review. I'm going to save that for the analysis section. But until then, I'm just going to dive headfirst into this joint and break down why I think it's one of the greatest films of our generation. In 1930s Mississippi, two twin brothers, Smoke and Stack, return home after a 7-year stay in Chicago where they lived the gangster lifestyle, choosing to return to the Jim Crow South to open their very own juke joint. They are joined by their little cousin, Sammy, known as Preacher Boy, who's a young and talented blues musician just looking for a chance to play. All goes really well until some fucky shit literally falls straight out of the sky and ruins everybody's night. It's pretty much just From Dusk Till Dawn, but with way less feet. There is, however, some fine shit spitting drool directly into someone's mouth. Gross. Who knew Irish jig dancing could be so scary? This movie has quite a lot going on. It has a lot on its plate. And with a less talented director, it could have ended up being a complete clusterfuck. But Coogler really just found a way to string all these different themes together and make this really cohesive piece that just really packs a punch. And each time you think they can't top themselves or they can't go in a different direction, they just keep going up and up and up. And by the climactic ending, I just found myself out of breath. I felt this almost out of body experience of like, holy shit, that was a ride. And the best part is that it's a fun popcorn movie. It's a genre film, or as Coogler likes to explain it, a genre fluid film, because it's funny, it's scary, it's got action, it's got the emotional drama, it's got social commentary, but most importantly, it's smart. It's not a dumb action flick, it's not just a jump scare horror movie, and it's not super black and white with its messaging. There's quite a bit of subtlety, and there's a lot of subtext that I think would just go over a lot of people's heads. And I think when you can tell that a piece is personal and that it has something to say, and it manages to still be entertaining and not this big lecture, that's what cements these movies in pop culture and what makes them so relevant 10, 20, 30 years after they were released. The film starts off with a very dark, foreboding atmosphere, and I hate to admit it, but the jump scares actually did get me. I mean, I saw it at the Alamo Drafthouse, and if you've ever been there before, you know, you order food at your seat and there's waitresses and stuff walking around. I feel so bad for them because every time they would flash some scary shit, everyone in the audience would go, "Ah!" And then you just hear plates like bounce up in the air. It was chaos, but it was such a great way to start off the film. But I almost completely forgot about that because for the next hour or so, the movie takes its time and goes at a very slow pace, but not in a bad way, in a way that really allows the characters to breathe and you get the proper introduction and it sets up all the pieces and it really makes you fall in love with these characters and allows you to attach yourself to them. So that way when shit does go down, it comes straight out of left field and you really feel like you're in the shit with them. The movie that everyone is comparing this to is From Dusk Until Dawn, which makes complete sense considering the subject matter. However, I'm a big fan of a show on Netflix called Midnight Mass. It honestly might actually be my favorite show ever made. I think it's probably tied with Dark, but that also has a lot of similar themes and a similar setup if you've seen that show. And I think that vampires is something that's been done over and over and over and over again. But even so, there are so many bangers with vampires in it. You got The Lost Boys, 30 Days a Night, Interview with a Vampire, Let the Right One In, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Nosferatu, Twilight. Much like zombies, vampires are used for political commentary and serve as an allegory for something else entirely. And that's no exception here. This movie isn't really about vampires. It's about those who use culture to heal versus those who use culture to exploit. To listen to songs of old is in some ways a form of time travel, and it's a very beautiful idea that I think was executed so well in this film. There is one scene in this film, and anyone who's seen it already knows what I'm talking about. There is a musical moment in this scene that brought me to tears, not sad tears, happy tears. This very just stimulating feeling I haven't felt in so long. It's one of those scenes, almost like the first bullet time sequence in The Matrix, where it just sparks this imagination in your brain. You go, holy shit, I didn't think you could do that. But you did it, and it's gonna be iconic. There's gonna be tons of movies after this that are gonna try and mimic it or rip it off, but this really was one of those scenes that will go down as one of the coolest scenes of any genre film, and I think really is the showstopper. I mean, it's about the midpoint of the movie. That's where you have this dramatic shift. It really drives home the main theme and really the whole point of the film, and it replayed in my mind over and over, and every time I've gone back to see it and taken other people with me, I get so excited for them to see that moment, and I think that scene alone deserves an award. even if the whole movie doesn't win an award, just that scene alone, almost as a short film, functions so beautifully and really is worth the price of admission all on its own. And come to think of it, it's really not even just one musical sequence. There's another musical sequence right after that also gave me goosebumps in a totally different way, and I left the movie with head to toe goosebumps, like out of breath, and I was just like, holy shit, everyone needs to see this right now. And luckily it's everyone kind of already has. I'm like really late to the party here, but hey, better late than never. This movie would not work nearly as well if the cast didn't all bring their A game, and this cast, damn, this cast is great. No one misses. Everyone brings something very unique to the screen, and I loved all the characters. They're all very memorable, and there's quite a lot of characters, but they're all clearly defined and given a specific role in the film. No one is wasted, and no one feels like fluff. And I think that speaks volumes about the writing and the casting. We have another Mickey 17 situation here with our lead actor playing two roles. Michael B. Jordan is so good in his role. I forgot he wasn't two people in real life. At no point did I ever feel like he was just one guy. And I actually, funny enough, I didn't know that he was playing twins when I went into this movie. Like, I saw him on the poster, but I really wasn't paying attention. And so there's a shot where it's showing him passing a cigarette to himself, and I thought I was having an aneurysm. I was like, wait, is that? I was like, oh, it's Michael B. Jordan. I went, no, actually, that's Michael B. Jordan. And I went, oh shit, he's playing twins. It was like a super stupid blonde moment, but once it clicked, I went, oh damn, that looks so good. And you know they strategically used the cigarette to mirror the two visual effects together with the smoke passing over. They're just showing off at this point. I guess the cloning technology has gotten so good that all these artists feel like they need to have twin actors in their movies. And hey, it's economical. You only have to pay one actor for 2 parts. Perfect. And while I really loved Michael B. Jordan's performance, I think I preferred Michael B. Jordan's performance. You have these 2 brothers, Smoke and Stack. They're real gangster types. You know, they came back from the big city, from Chicago, coming back home to try and create an autonomous, safe space for black people and form a real community. But in a way, they're almost kind of exploiting it themselves because they're doing it for profit. There's this tension between them whenever they open up the juke joint and they're starting dealing with money, and there's a little bit of bickering back and forth about trying to create a space where their people feel free while also still trying to make a profit. What's nice is that you have, you know, one brother who's more laid back, a little bit more open, one who's more uptight, less trusting, you know, a little bit more technical minded, but they're never cartoony. They're never too exaggerated. You really do feel like these are 2 brothers who've known each other their whole lives. They love each other. Even if they disagree, they'll always have each other's back. And you are fully convinced that it's 2 separate people, and it never once distracted me. There was never a visual effect, never a face replacement or anything weird that took me out of the movie. It was so seamless. It was beautiful. And of course, we got to talk about Haley Steinfeld from True Grit. She's excellent. She's very funny. She's very witty, and you really feel the passion and pain behind her character and her relation to one of the Smokestack brothers. We also have Wunmi Mosaku playing Annie, and she was definitely the standout among the women in this cast and brought this real vulnerability but also strength to the film. And it really demonstrated one of the main themes about autonomy, and I don't want to get too specific because it would be spoiler territory, but I left the movie with really strong impressions from her. And of course, a horror film, you gotta alleviate the tension once in a while, and the 2 comedic reliefs here were Omar Benson Miller as Cornbread and Delroy Lindo as Delta. Probably my 2 favorite characters in the film. Anytime they were on screen, that shit was funny as hell. However, that's not to say that they don't bring the drama as well, because there's one scene early on where Slim is telling a story about how him and one of his friends came across some cash, and he decided to invest it all in liquor and drink all his sorrows away. But his friend actually tried to make a name for himself and leave and go on this journey. But of course, this is Jim Crow South, and anytime the black community tried to get ahead, they would be completely stripped of anything that they built for themselves. Whether this be the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre or one of the many other stains on our history that were committed in the South. He finishes his story and explains how his friend was caught with the money, and instead of believing that it was his money, they made up a story about how he stole it in order to have an excuse to lynch him right then and there. And as he describes in detail how he was lynched, he starts banging on the car door and he starts humming to himself, and you can tell he's letting out pain. It's almost more of a groan, but it slowly fades into more of a musical rhythm. And that's when they tell Preacher Boy in the back to start playing the guitar. And it really links how pain and trauma is what influenced blues, and how blues is a source of healing and is a way of dealing with those really difficult, horrific things in life. Whether it be as something as simple as a broken heart or something more dark like systemic racism. It was a very eerie and dark and emotional scene, and I think it's one that's been overlooked as being a standout moment in the movie. And while we see a lot of familiar faces and established stars in this film, a new star was born right here in Sinners, and I'm talking about Miles Caton. Not only does Miles have the voice of an angel, but he has the acting chops to boot. I would have assumed that he had a long, successful career, but when I looked up the cast on my phone, I went, holy shit, this is his first time at acting? No way! He brings the drama, he brings the joy, he brings everything you want in a main character. He was instantly relatable, likable, and he was probably the main takeaway from the movie. Don't get me wrong, love me some Michael B. Jordan. I've loved him ever since I saw him in Chronicle. I think it's a horribly underrated film. Everyone should see it. Steve Montgomery for president.
Oh, Steve Montgomery for president! Oh!
But Miles has a certain suave and charm and such a unique speaking voice on top of his singing voice that I just don't think we see a lot of on the big screens. So I'm looking forward to Ryan Coogler's filmography, and I'm definitely looking forward to Miles Caton's future work. But what is your hero without a good villain? last but not least, Jack O'Connell as Remick. There's been a lot of on-screen vampires. It's been done to death, so it's really hard to stand out. But Jack O'Connell brings that suave, charming, and dangerous charisma to disarm you like a vampire should. And he also has that creepy, vicious, animalistic lust underneath it all. And he just really brought his A game, and I don't want to spoil it, but let's just say he knows how to break it down. So Sinners has it all. Great story, great cast, gorgeous visuals, and a banger soundtrack. This is a film I think will hold up over time, and as someone who has seen it multiple times in theaters now, I can confidently say this has become a personal favorite. But I do have one nitpick that I can't go without mentioning, and it's that this movie does that thing that a lot of movies do. It's this cliche of, the villain really wants to get to someone and they finally get them in their clutches. And instead of killing them or taking them or just finishing their goal, they sit there and they monologue and they talk about yada, 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 yada. It's like, dude, he's right there. Finish the job.
I have a gun in my room. You give me 5 seconds, I'll get it. I'll come back down here. Boom! I'll blow their brains out.
Scott, you just don't get it, do you? You don't.
That always frustrates me, and this movie does have a moment like that, but it's one little thing, and honestly, it still looked cool as shit. Maybe I'm still just too high off the tunes, but this movie really got to me. Like I said, it brought a tear to my eye, and I had an ear-to-ear grin, and once the credits started rolling, I felt so overwhelmed. And by the way, there is a mid-credits and post-credits scene, so make sure to stick around for those. But before I get into spoilers, let me slap a rating on this real quick. From the way I'm talking about it and hyping it up, you probably already suspected this. I'm going to give this film a 10 out of 10. Yes, this is a perfect film for me, even with my nitpicks. It's something I think will remain relevant well into the future, and it's going to inspire a lot of other filmmakers. You're going to have a lot of copycat films, but this really is an original. Even with all the inspirations, Ryan Coogler really brought his own voice to this. And considering this movie is a farewell love letter to his uncle, who loved the blues, I think that this movie did him proud. And when doo-doo dog shit like Minecraft is doing bank at the box office, it's so refreshing to see like an actual fucking movie for once. So now I am officially going to spoilers, so let's get into the rich, nitty-gritty details that I think made this movie so great. This is totally off topic, but I really love the way Remick goes, Sammy! Oh, I cannot stop saying that to myself. So I was thinking back to the magical blues moment where he transcends time and space and connects the ancestors of the past and the ancestors of the future. And, he literally burns the house down. He tears down the roof with his voice. And I thought, how much cheesier and shittier that scene would have been if Coogler decided to put in like actual celebrities or like actual artists. Like, I think it was really smart that he just put, a break dancer, a disc jockey, you had your rock and roll guy on the guitar, big booty ladies twerking in the kitchen, and just general archetypes that represent certain history or time periods of music, as opposed to trying to digitally recreate like famous historical rappers or artists. I think that would have felt kind of cheap. I think in less talented hands, this scene could have really just gone completely off the rails and been really just silly. Oh my God, could you imagine fucking Eminem? Eminem comes up or fucking Vanilla Ice. Part of what makes the vampires in this movie so fucking cool is the glowing eyes. Apparently the creepy glowing eyes was inspired by Puss in Boots, and yeah, that makes Ryan Coogler a certified cinephile. The scene where Cornbread is taking a piss outside of the juke joint and you see all the fireflies and you just see two sets of dots that aren't moving and then they start blinking. Damn, that shit is so creepy. It's like little touches like that, or the scene where Mary comes out to greet the vampires and they're singing that really sorrowful song and they lure her in with that really sad, somber tune. And as they sing, they do this panning shot over the three of them and their eyes are completely obscured by shadow. It is just this little detail that made the scene so creepy, so unsettling and foreboding. And I also appreciate that they never showed Remick flying outright. You only see him out of focus in the background, slowly levitating up or down, and it makes it scarier than if you were to just see it outright. It's just like this creepy subliminal little thing, like the shit in Hereditary. It's like you blink and you'll miss it, but it adds this creepy nightmare quality to it. And can we appreciate how the Native Americans showed up, saw that they were Klan members, and were just like, you know what, fuck it, this is between you and God, smell you later. Just got the hell out of there. And it almost felt like a Chekhov's gun moment, because their appearance did make me kind of think they were gonna come back and save the day. And I don't want to say I was bummed they weren't, but I would really like a spin-off, whether it be an HBO series or like a prequel movie about Native American Van Helsing vampire hunters, like in the Wild West. That shit is such a cool concept. You could easily make an entire other thing just about that. The scene at the end of the bar reminded me of that one level in Resident Evil 4 where you and Lewis are locked up in the barn just waiting for enemies to come through the window. I wanted to pick up my GameCube controller and just start blasting. Ryan Coogler is known for his antagonists, most importantly, Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger in Black Panther. He wrote a very complex, sympathetic villain that added a lot of weight to the film overall. And here, he did something slightly more subtle by making Remick, the vampire, Irish, and by drawing the parallels between Irish and Black oppression. This is something we kind of take for granted nowadays, and a lot of people forget, but there was a time in US history when Irish people were not considered white and were very much oppressed. Who knows how long Remick has been alive and how much oppression that he had faced. So in his own fucked up way, he kind of thought he was helping out these people. But even if he genuinely thought he was helping, deep down he still was a selfish monster. Sure, he carries the pain of oppression and is very much empathetic towards Sammy and all of his friends. But ultimately, he just sees them as pawns or a means to his personal end. One scene that illustrates just how perfect he is at manipulating people is actually his introduction whenever he drops in from the sky and goes to the KKK house. Whenever they open the door, of course, he starts immediately begging for his life, and they just act cold to him and hold guns in his face. But then he looks up and he sees the Klan robes and he realizes, oh shit, these are racist, they're superficial, they're shitty people. And what does he do? He immediately pulls out gold and offers them money because he realized he can't get to them through empathy. It's one of those little details you don't notice at first, but after watching it 3 times, you really pick up on all these little details that Coogler wrote in there, and it's so awesome. The whole idea is that these vampires have a hive mind and thus eliminate all the barriers, eliminate any differences, and makes them all unified, all one. They really are truly this perfect community. But the downside, of course, being you'll never see the sun again and you will have to feed on the living forever. But as he stands there at that door and he's trying to convince them to join the Horde, he talks about how they'll never have to worry about the racism again and how they could get back at the racists. But is it really his place to fight on their behalf? And ultimately, he decided what was best for them, all to get to Sammy and appropriate his gift. He's not just a regular vampire, he's a cultural vampire, or a culture vulture. And a great scene of foreshadowing is when the 3 vampires comically pull out their banjos and start playing this very sinister tune, and out of the entire group standing at the door, there were only 3 who were actually into it: Cornbread, Mary, and Stack. And what do you know? Those are the 3 characters who get turned into vampires. Again, it's one of those details you can't notice after one viewing. It's something that you only pick up on when you watch it again. Earlier in my review, I was talking about how Annie represents autonomy, and what I mean by that is that she's a character who practices voodoo or witchcraft, and she has her mojo bag that she gives to Smoke, and she has all these unorthodox ways of treating problems, things that would be seen as archaic or culture from a world long gone. And I can't take credit for this. This is actually something my friend pointed out after we watched the movie, but it wasn't Christianity that saved everybody. You know, they didn't fight the vampires with crosses or any of that stuff. They used the mojo bag. It was, you know, the garlic concoction, that little potion she made. It was all basically techniques brought from her culture. And there's also a scene at the end when Remick is talking about how Christianity was forced onto him just like it was forced onto Sammy, because Christianity, of course, was the white man's religion. It was the religion forced upon the slaves from Africa. Granted, it was a very censored version of the Bible that didn't include the parts about letting my people go, of course, because you don't want to give them any ideas. But again, it was this warped colonizer ideology, and a lot of the African cultures that was brought with the slaves was lost over time. So she is, a relic of the past, and it's her knowledge and it's her connection to her culture which ends up protecting them. It's the only thing that really was legit at all. And the same idea actually applies to Sammy as well, because Sammy, of course, loves the blues. He loves his guitar, and it's something that his dad discourages him from doing. His dad wants him to be dedicated to Christ, dedicated to the Lord, and even though he loves his father, he feels very rebellious towards him because of this. And I didn't think of this until I started editing, but very opening shots of the film quite literally overlay and line up shots of Sammy's father with shots of Remick as he spreads his arms open and gestures towards Sammy, directly drawing the parallel between his father and Remick, as authority figures projecting their ideology onto him. And he feels that classic Christian sinner's guilt whenever he goes off with his cousins to play. But what was it at the end that saved Sammy? It was his guitar. His guitar has this silver dish, and when he smacks Remick in the face, that's what stuns him and allows Smoke to save the day. It was his guitar, his love for blues, that protected him against evil, not Christianity, not anything his father passed down to him. And then you get that scene when he walks into the church at the end, and his father's telling him, let it go, son. And no, he holds it over his heart, and he goes off and goes on his own journey. Again, it's that black autonomy. That's really what a lot of the movie is about. He found his own voice, and his voice has the power to bring people together. And that's why Remick is the perfect foil to Sammy, because Sammy chooses to use his gift for healing. He chooses it for community. But Remick is on this vengeful path of endless violence. To be a vampire, you must exploit and prey on others. He is the colonized who has become the colonizer. It is solidarity at the expense of the individual, and it is essentially just a cult at that point. While the juke joint was really just a little slice of heaven, it was this community, and it was really just a place for people to let go and feel safe. But of course, you can't let people walk all over you. You have to know when to fight back, and Smoke, ooh, damn, he has the craziest shootout at the end of that movie. Just when you thought the movie was done, like you had this excellent climax, you're like, good, that's all I needed, perfect. Suddenly they bring out the big guns. You're like, wait, what the fuck? You're like, oh shit, Remick wasn't lying. He was telling the truth. They were coming to get him. And he just mows them all down, Quentin Tarantino style. It was so satisfying. That shit was so funny. It was the cherry on top of the cake. I never thought an Irish jig could be so scary. That scene was so creepy with all the glowing eyes circling behind him. But Cornbread was digging it. Like, Cornbread was really tearing it up on that dance floor. And Jack O'Connell can dance. Apparently that was totally him. That wasn't a stunt double. He had that little hop and skip, and just he's got the moves. And I'll come clean, I'll fully admit that when I first saw the trailer in theaters, I walked in like halfway through because I was in the bathroom or whatever, and I only got a glimpse at it, and I misjudged it. I really thought it was going to be kind of like another knockoff of Get Out, and then just be, oh, it's an allegory for racism. And I guess the idea of like a white devil racist vampire is actually not bad. I think it would have worked just fine, but Coogler decided to do something just a lot more subtle, and I think a lot more smart, by making the vampire more gray and throwing in that Irish history that really just mixed it up, and I think allowed the movie to have a much broader conversation than just racism is bad. It's like, yeah, we know that. Oh yeah, one last thing. Those 90s outfits that they were wearing at the end in the future, that shit was clean. It was cheesy, but it was clean. Like I said at the beginning, this movie has a lot going on, and I don't think there's a lot of directors that could have pulled it off with such style as Coogler. Under a less talented director, this whole thing could have been way more messy, but Coogler knew what he wanted to do. He had a story he wanted to tell. He had themes that he wanted to expand upon. He just knocked it out of the park, and that's, again, what's gonna make this movie stand the test of time. So With all that being said, I want to know, what things did you guys notice? Do you think any of my theories are valid? And if not, what are some things you thought about it? I would love to hear it. Love to have a discussion. Sorry this came out so late. I just have been really busy, but there was no way I was going to skip out on this because I unfortunately never got to talk about The Substance, and that was my favorite film from last year. And something tells me that this is going to be my favorite movie for this year. Well, we'll see when 28 years later comes out. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Big boy.